Hello, this is Jim Lane, Mayor of Scottsdale. In my ongoing efforts to try to connect with our community during these unprecedented times with COVID 19, the impact of COVID 19, I'm really glad to have uh, join with me today Dr. Gerd Wuestemann, who is the CEO and president of Scottsdale Arts. And he's been in that position since 2018. And before he served as the executive director of the Acadiana Center for the Arts in Lafayette, Louisiana. He holds a doctorate of musical arts from the University of Arizona and a master's from the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Gerd, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Marilyn, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Just to get right into it a little bit, of course, you've been here for just a little over 2 years now. And I just did want to ask the question whether you and Cece, your wife Cece, have fully adjusted, particularly in view of now, of course, the circumstance of the pandemic that we're in today.
Well, unless you're reptilian, I'm not sure you can ever fully adjust to 116-degree weather. But I should tell you this, we both love it here. We recently purchased a home here in the historic cattle track neighborhood in Scottsdale with the iconic Goldwater Institute down the street, the cattle track arts compound across the street. We feel like we belong here all along. I have a very strong affinity for the desert. As you just mentioned, I did my doctorate out here, albeit at the other university. And always thought it would be wonderful to return to Arizona. I have a real love for this place. We're thrilled to be here. My wife loves it, and the hot summers notwithstanding, this is about as good a place to be sequestered as I can imagine these days.
Well, very good. And as we had just been discussing a little bit, we have been designated as one of the best places to be sequestered in the United States. The COVID 19 pandemic has impacted nearly all arts organizations, as I'm sure you well know, and all Scottsdale organizations. But as an arts organization here in Scottsdale, what are the unique impacts that Scottsdale Arts has had to experience?
Mayor, that's a great question. Of course, we are not unlike any small business or mid-sized business. We've experienced all the usual hardships that many of us have gone through who run your own companies or a restaurant or a bar or any other business. But there were some really unique things. I recall right at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a very difficult decision to make, and in hindsight, I think we made the right call. We were about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of our arts festival, which is the longest standing in the nation. And the festival would have started right as the pandemic hit its stride, and we had to make the very painful call last minute to call it off. Because we had artists from across the country from many hot zones here selling their wares that would have resulted in 100,000 touch points for our audiences here, and we felt that the risk was too great. Having to face, I made the rounds and talked to every one of these artists face to face, thanking them for being here and giving them our very best wishes. And it was a real heartbreak to do this. And afterwards, what we did is we wanted to, we look at this as an ecosystem. Artists, arts organizations, municipalities, all of us are in this together. So I felt very strongly that we needed to make it as right for these artists and people that traveled here as we could. So we reimbursed them for all their expenses, etc., to help them make it through this difficult time. So one of the things that I think weighs on my conscience more than anything is that artists often live in what we refer to as the gig economy. As long as times are good, they can sell their wares and go to market and make a good living. But as soon as this pandemic hit, most of them had very few reserves and most of their business dried up almost overnight. Add to that the thousands of art workers, people that work as tech staff in theaters or as installers in museums, all of a sudden found themselves in similar situations. So we tried very hard to invest in their well-being and keep them employed as long as we possibly can. That was a unique challenge for us, and one that we were only able to meet because we had worked extremely hard with the organization in recent years to right-size ourselves, to right our financial ship so that we could actually hold on to many of those folks. Another unique challenge for us in the arts, and we've certainly gone through this in the last 4 months, is that we typically book events, performing arts shows, exhibits years in advance. Our exhibits are typically planned and booked 2 or 3 years ahead. Performing arts shows, we have some of the finest national and international artists touring coming through here. They're on a circuit, right? They go from city to city. And we book into this circle that they make across the nation every year. And often that is like a year plus out. So we literally had to, all this came crumbling down, of course, very quickly after the pandemic hit. And we had to literally rebook about 120 individual events. In addition to that, we then redrafted every single contract with these artists so that we could have a flexible fee rate with them, because as we're coming back into presenting shows this fall, God willing, we may only have 30 or 40% of our seats available because of safety measures. So we implemented contracts that reflected that different pay scale, and some artists were okay with that, and some artists said, you know, the risk isn't worth it to me. And so it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of replanning and reshuffling. And I was ever so proud of my team for doing all that in stride and really making that happen. There was another very unique aspect for us in all this, and that was typically we only have about a 4 to 6 window during the summer when our facilities aren't fully occupied, where we can do any kind of maintenance and renovation work, both on the Center for Performing Arts and the Museum of Contemporary Art. Both are city-owned facilities, and we often work with city staff and do a lot of things on our own as well. As soon as we finished sort of emergency triaging of the situation within a few weeks, we said, okay, if we're really going to look at a prolonged shutdown, what can we do that normally we always have to defer? So this summer, I'm happy to say, our staff, safely socially distanced and far apart with masks, executed a lot of renovations and upkeep and maintenance and improvements to our buildings. We installed a whole new front retail area at Smoka. We removed old carpeting and replaced it at the center. So a lot of updates, a lot of sprucing up we were able to do. And that was a bit unique to us because normally we would always be interrupted by the flow of public coming to our buildings. The last and perhaps to some degree unique impact to us in the arts business, in the nonprofit business, but then again, not that unlike what businesses go through, was that early on in this, we recognized that if we're in this for some time, preservation of cash will be king, right? In any crisis, the better you manage your cash flow, the better you can hold on to your financial disposition, the more you can calculate how much cash do I still have that I need to restart my business when that becomes possible. So we very quickly started working extensively in our finance department to take a hard look at our cash preservation, to try to go after PPP monies and other loans so that we can lessen the burden on our Scottsdale citizens on any dollars here, but still keep our staff employed to, again, alleviate any kind of burden to the city's welfare systems and so forth. And we were very successful in being one of the first organizations in Arizona to receive some federal grants and some large institutional grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and others that helped us, again, to not only keep everybody together, but pivot and prepare for the earliest possible restart of our season come September.
You know, Gerd, the interesting component in all that you've said, of course, from a management standpoint, a financial standpoint, and frankly, the interaction with the folks that you contract with, your employees certainly as well, but nevertheless, the people you contract with, and making sure you tried to keep that as whole as possible. That would be the artists that came and unfortunately had to be turned away, and I know and remember that was a difficult time. But for the city of Scottsdale, our arts community on the overall, and certainly Scottsdale Arts and the museums, are an important component of an industry that in and of itself is adversely impacted because it's involving people gathering together, generally in a close proximity, to be able to enjoy and to be engaged with the arts. And so it's it's interesting that the same dilemma that we have with our overall tourism industry impacts us here as well, because it's a component part of it, as our restaurants and our bars and frankly our other theaters and our other forms of entertainment that generally involve people engaging with each other, which goes to the point that, engaging with an audience is a critical component for you and your organization. Have you taken steps to try to engage in a different kind of way? And if so, has that been successful, or is it sort of just a fill-in kind of thing?
Yeah, Mayor, that's a great question, and of course one that we asked ourselves right away. We recognized early on that this entire ecosystem of the arts will be impacted when artists stop touring because they're afraid of catching the virus. That affects all of us. My colleagues and friends just down the street at Museum of the West or Grease Paint Theater or across Scottsdale all were heavily impacted. And early on, we made a conscious decision to say, this is a time where we put the we over the me. I think this is a unique time where if the closer we stand together and support each other, the better we will fare. And I think that has served us well in the arts community across the valley and across the state. So what we did right away is we started conversations with our colleagues in terms of how they handle things. We started a monthly and weekly meetings as a brain trust to figure out what measures do we take to keep people safe, to keep ourselves in business. We very quickly became part of national conversations about developing other delivery systems. So after a few weeks again of triaging, we immediately shifted and focused on now what? Within the third week, I think, of the shutdown, we produced our first live streaming events out of the center. So where we can safely convene our staff to produce a show. We have since then invested and are investing yet again in better equipment to give a more professional look and feel for this. We bought a higher level streaming system. And once we had situated and set this up, we started to develop 3 or 4 streaming events per year, which we've consistently been doing for the last 3.5 months. Those range from Friday afternoon music performances to, I think this last weekend we had a trivia night out of the museum, which is something we normally do in person once a month. And we typically have anywhere from 50 to 500 or so participants in these respective events. So it's a pretty good local outreach that we are encountering there. In addition to that, all those events, all the content we're providing and producing is available on our website, scottsdalearts.org, any given time. So we have this blogging interface where people can pick and choose what they want to look at, behind the scenes tours of the museum, our museum's curators picking their favorite pieces and going over them and explaining and exploring things, etc. Very personable engagement. What we've seen as a result is that normally we have heavy traffic to our website because people buy tickets for the next season, etc. Instead, our traffic has not fallen off at all during this pandemic, but we have maintained and actually increased much of our traffic to our website because of the content we're able to provide. A big portion of our work does not happen at this museum or at the center, but happens out in the communities. As you know, Scottsdale Public Art is one of our branches, and that work never stopped. If you were to go to the waterfront right now, you'd see beautiful, colorful new recycling bins all up and down the Scottsdale waterfront that were installed in the last couple of weeks during the pandemic. We have continued to move forward in producing public artworks, getting them ready for install. In our education and outreach component, Scottsdale Arts Learning Innovation, we also continue to work throughout the end of the school year with roughly 32,000 school children in the school system. We immediately shifted all the content to do distance work with them, and have built new platforms to continue to do that. So all the digital and virtual content providing has been very successful and has found a great audience, and I think has helped our community cope with this. Most importantly, perhaps, though, we spent the last 3 months working towards a reopening of our facilities. Because as you said, Mayor, and I think you're absolutely right, we are about convening people in person and facilitating arts experiences. It's that in-person experience, that energy that comes when you see a great performance in person. That's what drives us more than anything. So we've been working incredibly hard in rebooking shows and having a season produced in starting to put it on sale and selling tickets. As a matter of fact, if you can see this, we published our season guide, our preview season guide for the year about a month ago, and have been quite successful in actually finding an audience for a fall season. We are currently the only arts organization in the state that is ready to produce a fall season, and we are poised by late September, early October to have people in our buildings again and facilitate great arts experiences in person. And a big part of that, of course, also has been to produce safety procedures for those audiences and implement, with the help of the city of Scottsdale, new technologies that will keep people safe in our buildings as well. And we've done just that.
Interesting, and frankly, as part of that too, as you're probably aware, the city has invested in city venues and structures to actually enhance the safety on a more widespread basis and on a continuing basis from moment to moment, as it would be in some instances. So we're proud of your efforts, certainly as far as the city is concerned, but also with these facilities in this position. We're probably in one of the premier positions of inviting people back into a very safe environment. So we'll keep on that track for sure. You know, recently my council colleagues and I approved a $1.5 million from our federal CARES Act funding, which was actually dubbed the AZ CARES Act as it came through the state, to help support the arts. Tell us a little bit about the grant process that you're engaging in to distribute or to allocate these funds in accordance with the designs of the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic on that community.
Mayor, that's a great question. And first of all, I want to say a huge and heartfelt thanks to you and the council for this allocation to arts and culture. The field really needs the money. And I know and recognize that proportionately what the city of Scottsdale allocated here is on par or above what many other municipalities have done. I think you said it earlier, the art and culture is at the heart of Scottsdale. It's part of Scottsdale's DNA. And as such, I think supporting the rebirth and regrowth of the sector is critical. And I'm ever so thankful that you and your colleagues on the council have allocated this money. Also, we owe a big debt to Karen Churchett, one of your city staff members who worked very closely with me in developing this distribution program. We very quickly realized that we have an existing program called Community Arts Grants. We make these grants, about $100,000 and some every year, to arts organizations across Scottsdale. We've been doing this since 1994. It's a great template. We have a lot of experience. So we felt that we could quickly graft a very non-bureaucratic process of distributing this money to the arts organizations and putting it in the field based on our expertise, and that's exactly what we did. So I personally created a template of questions because we wanted to know how our organization's faring through this, how are they handling and preparing their restart, because that's most important to all of us, I think. And we have developed a 3-tiered structure under which organizations can apply based on your budget size, whether or not you're in the city building, and largely if you have any matching funds to bring to the table. And so based on that, I think in this first round, we were able to make about 16 or so major grants to support many of the arts organizations across the city. The grant portal that we utilize opened last Monday, and we're trying to have a very concise time frame for this because we'd like to be able to come back to council for your first meeting in August and report that the grants have been allocated and we're ready to cut the checks and help out these organizations. I felt that my organization, because we have this close relationship with the city and really are the city's cultural stewards, I felt that for us it was a moral obligation to stand up and help in the distribution process and make sure that this is happening fairly and equitably and quickly. And lastly, I think we're planning or we're thinking about a second round of grants, if there's any money left at the end of this process, where we might be able to include one-day festivals, cultural institutions, as well as potentially individual artists that have also been suffering through this. So I think it's a fantastic program. Again, I want to thank the city for stepping up and allocating these funds. I think it's going to do a world of good for the arts organizations here in the city.
Oh, very good, and certainly you're very welcome, and I will tell you that both from the CARES Act and also the Arizona CARES Act, it was a worthy effort to try to rescue and to recover a lot of different elements within our business community, our arts community, and everything. So it's really to the taxpayers on the overall across the country in trying to recover from some of this, which was inflicted upon us in an effort to tamp down the demand that we might see for medical facilities and equipment and resources in trying to keep the surge from getting into a dangerous level. And of course, we're now into somewhat of a second surge, if you will, and we thus far have seen some good results in addressing that and tamping it back down again too, so that we didn't get into a dangerous situation. But really, thank you for your efforts in that area of your expertise and what you're doing there as one important element for Scottsdale. You know, you've mentioned a number of things, and I think really probably more innovative than maybe across the valley. I don't know. But are there other arts organizations that you've seen that have implemented somewhat innovative kinds of approaches? You said something a little earlier, and I'm not here to challenge you on that, but that Scottsdale may stand singularly in place to being ready to have a fall season. I don't know if that's maybe unique, as you've indicated, or there's others out there thinking of a different plan that may be innovative in a different way.
Certainly, many of my colleagues across the country and here in the Valley have unique approaches to this and have great innovation and show great ingenuity in pivoting and really developing new strategies. We're certainly not alone in that. I have tons of respect for what everybody's doing. What puts us in a somewhat unique place right now is this. Within weeks of the shutdown, the majority of our arts organizations across the state were financially so strapped and had almost no reserves that they were forced to part ways with the majority of their staff, which leaves them ill prepared for whatever happens next. In addition to that, 3 or 4 of our major competitors, Chandler, Tempe, Mesa Center for the Arts, are city-owned entities. We have a close relationship with the city through a management agreement, but we are an independent 501. Those city entities completely shuttered doors months ago, all the way through the end of this year. So they have clearly stated that they would not have a fall season up to this point. So that put us in a somewhat unique place. And while we all know that there's a lot of uncertainty, we might experience a second wave. It may stabilize. We may see things get worse before they get better. We are extremely optimistic, and I want to say thanks to your leadership and many of the difficult decisions you've made. I salute your steadfast mask statement that you made, and we certainly are adhering to the same. I know those are not easy positions to take in a charged climate, but I think we see positive results from this right now across Scottsdale. We're getting a handle on this, and I think that's critically important. I feel very strongly that it's our own responsibility not to infect others, and to hopefully get a handle on this quickly. We have implemented all those things. A couple of months ago, I purchased 2 55-gallon drums of hand sanitizer. I never thought I would ever be in the business of buying hand sanitizer in bulk, but we did because we anticipated that we can have a fall season. So we positioned ourselves, because our staff's intact, because we were able to renegotiate artist contracts, because we had financial resources that we preserved, we positioned ourselves to be first out the gate this fall. That much is for certain. And then what we did is we said, okay, if it's possible for us to step on the gas, we will, because we want to be part of the solution. We want to help Scottsdale get back in the saddle as quickly as possible. But if we have to hit the brakes and explore other avenues, we're prepared to do that as well. So we designed sort of door A, B, and C. And we said, what can we do if we can't get back into our venue come October, if things get worse? We're going to continue to work virtually with the school system. Again, we are in every public school in the Scottsdale Unified School District with our work. We're going to continue with things like parking garage shows, drive-in and drive-through experiences. We're shifting. We're going to create something called we're calling working title as a mobile art brigade, where we create art vans that we can take into neighborhoods, and if it's not possible to be safely in community centers or senior centers, we will go literally and bring services to our elderly and engage them through the classes and arts workshops that have brightened their lives for many years that we facilitate every year. So we have taken a lot of steps to move forward in all those areas. We have a renewed focus on local artists. If national artists stop touring or their routes don't allow them to come through here in the recent future, we are ready to supplant that with strong local performers instead. And of course, one thing that's an advantage for us is we have this beautiful outdoor campus, the Civic Center, which soon enough, thanks to the bond we passed, we'll also renovate. On this outdoor campus this fall, we have designed ways to set up a semi-permanent stage, and through October and November, beautiful times in the year here, we can take our performances outside and socially distance people and take any precaution to make sure that we can still provide great arts experiences. So I think we've tried to, and I want to say huge kudos to my team. I'm not the most creative or biggest out-of-box thinker. I'm too German for that. But my staff has had extraordinary ideas and creativity and has really shown great resolve in helping us provide plans for a lot of different scenarios, and I think that's going to really help Scottsdale get back to work.
Excellent, excellent. And I agree. I think it will help us all get back to work. You know, Gerd, I just really want to thank you very much for your time today and talking to our community and myself with regard to all that you're engaged in, with regard to what it has taken for the arts community to be ready and standing by, and also to be surviving and helping others to recover. So it's a great credit to the organization. So thank you for them. And with that, I just would want to again thank you very much for engaging with the public and being with us today. And good luck with everything. And stay masked up.